Josh, we might kick off. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining the second of our workshop series. Today, Josh is going to be talking about an introduction to REDCap. Josh loves REDCap, and I am sure by the end of this session, you're all going to love REDCap as well. So my name is Jacqui Richmond, and Josh and I work very closely together on the Workforce Development Health Service Delivery component of ECA Australia. So over to you, Josh.
Sure, thanks, Jacqui. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which I live and work, which is the Wurrung and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So REDCap. REDCap is it's a not-for-profit data collection software that was developed by researchers at the Vanderbilt University in America. So it was developed in 2004, and at the time there wasn't really a lot going on in terms of an actual research database that functioned online. And so they developed this project, they developed the REDCap project, and it was highly successful. And so they decided to make it freely available to all non-commercial research organizations worldwide. And since it became available, over 5,000 institutions have started using it, with over 200 partners in Australia. So it's now not just available to research organizations, it's also available to not-for-profits, local health districts, hospitals, all range of organizations, as long as they're non-commercial. Once a REDCap partnership is established, the REDCap itself is managed by the organizations that have signed up for it. So it's not actually managed by the Vanderbilt University team. They just install it and then they leave you to your own devices. So like I said, REDCap, once it's installed, is managed by the organizations which have partnered with the Vanderbilt. So if you are going to use it in an organization, it's really practical and most effective really when you have some sort of IT support within the organization itself. So at the Burnet, we have our own REDCap administrators, and most organizations have a designated staff or like team to manage the REDCap. So it's important to make sure that you've got sort of the capacity to manage it. It doesn't take a huge amount of work, but just some people around to kind of react to potential situations where it's required. There's also the option of having affiliations with REDCap partners that have their own REDCaps and having research projects set up within their REDCap system, which just requires them creating an account for you and you being able to access their REDCap database. So those accounts can be set up pretty quickly and easily by partner organizations. And this last point, make sure you're friends with your REDCap manager is a hot tip from me. We have Long Nguyen, who's in the call today, who's the REDCap administrator at the Burnet, and he's fielded many questions from me over the last couple of years around REDCap and helping me out with a few of the research projects that I work on. So if you are interested in joining REDCap, but you don't want to get a REDCap set up within your own organization, or you don't have the capacity to do it, then on the REDCap website, there's a search function, which the link is just up on the screen. Sorry, I was on the wrong slide. The link is up on the screen to be able to search and find a potential partner within your area or someone you might already be partnered with who can support you and help set you up with a REDCap if you need. So there are some key advantages of REDCap that I just wanted to go through over other sort of systems like SurveyMonkey and stuff. But one key kind of advantage that REDCap has is that every time that a user within a REDCap project makes a change or edit to a REDCap project, then that can actually be tracked and seen by other users within the REDCap, which just allows for a bit more accountability and a bit more version control in terms of if you make a change to a question or a variable, And later on, you want to be able to see what that change was because it might have changed the data or changed the nature of the question. Then you can go back and actually look at that individually. The REDCap tools themselves, once they're developed inside a REDCap database, they exist in a kind of silo within the REDCap itself, which means that rather than having, in some organizations, you might have a network drive which has multiple projects split across multiple folders, which can become problematic if later down the track someone leaves the organization and you want to try and access some of the research or some of the surveys that they've set up. So with the REDCap, because it's in a centralized location, you can actually look through and access all of the different surveys simultaneously in the same place, which is also really beneficial because once you've got all these projects set up and stored in this space, then you can actually replicate them and reproduce them and use them for different projects. And there might be a survey which really closely resembles the type of research that you're interested in doing. So you can actually duplicate a previous project and then just maybe make some minor edits and adjustments to make it suit your purposes rather than starting from scratch and having to reinvent the wheel. And our last key advantage is, this is really a kind of an ethical advantage, but the data that is produced and stored within the REDCap server is managed and maintained by the organization who's hosting the REDCap. So it's unlike some free survey tools where the data is stored potentially overseas with organizations and companies that you don't have a kind of MOU or kind of arrangement with in terms of data storage. Having a REDCap set up in your own database allows you to know where the data is and be able to more closely control it. Cool, so now I'm going to introduce Long Nguyen.
Josh, sorry, Josh, can I just ask, are there any questions from anybody about any of those things? Are you here because you're interested in using REDCap? Is you're in the pre-contemplative phase of something I want to do? Or you've heard Josh talk about it so much that you were just curious? Rob's in that category. You've been talking about this for so long. I think my learning from a lot of this, Josh, is that, and I know you're going to talk to Long about some of these issues, but you know, that it's a bit, I find it a bit scary, REDCap, but it doesn't actually need to be. So you need to set yourself up with, you know, supports and making sure you make friends and have people that, a community almost of people that use REDCap. So no, please feel free to put questions in the chat, but over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Jacqui. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to post them in the chat or interrupt me and take yourself off mute. Yeah, so I'd like to introduce Long, who's the REDCap data manager and REDCap administrator at the Burnet Institute, who's had pretty extensive experience working in REDCap and was pretty instrumental to getting it set up at the Burnet. Long, you there?
Yeah, morning everyone. Just going to pop my REDCap lanyard on to self-identify as a REDCap expert.
Hey Josh, do you maybe want to stop sharing your screen so we can see the two of you?
Absolutely. There we go. How's that looking? Is that a bit better? Yeah, welcome Long. I want to get one of those REDCap lanyards. I don't know where you got it. Did you just get sent it?
It's days of training and hard work.
Days of training. I have to go through a training session. Cool. All right. So this is an opportunity to ask Long some questions. So this is open to the floor. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the chat or take themselves off mute. REDCap propaganda, nice Anna. But I think I might kick it off. I've got some planted questions, so I'll ask my first one, which I'm actually very curious about. But Long, when you started using REDCap at the Burnet, from both the administrator side and the user side, how much training did you actually have to go through to get it all set up and running and become familiar with the system?
Thanks, Josh. Morning, everyone. That is a good question, and it's not one that I really thought much about, because it was, I guess we just had a pressing need for REDCap, and so once we got it, I think I literally spent a few days learning sort of what features it has, just reading about it. And then, the best thing to do with REDCap to learn is to actually just create projects. So I created sort of an example project for different ways we thought we'd use it at Burnet. So I created a sample project for this is how you collect data through an online survey. This is how you might collect data in an offline sort of mode. And this is how you might collect it. You're just sort of entering it, the data entry from a paper form. So I just had some sample projects I'd set up and played with. And I kind of just self-taught myself. And I'd say we had REDCap for a number of days before we sort of went live, and we had, people using it for the first time. And so, most of my learning then occurred when people sort of came to me with projects, and they were, how do you use REDCap to do this long? So the first one that we had would, was a simple sort of online survey that you might be able to do in SurveyMonkey kind of thing. But it was then knowing, spending half an hour with them, working out what they needed to do, and then knowing, well, in REDCap, these are the buttons you need to press to enable an online survey. So that would have, I remember that meeting and took sort of maybe 30 odd minutes to just sort of click through, this is how you might set up your project. And then I'd leave that person to then run off and play with it for as long as they needed to, because the good thing with REDCap is you've got this sort of, it's like a sort of development environment, I guess, where you can play with your project and spend some time to familiarize yourself and get it ready before you go live. So there's no, it's easy enough to sort of self-teach, I guess, in a way. But yeah, so I'd say it wasn't a huge learning curve, but certainly having the opportunity to just set up and play with your projects for a little bit sort of can really, help you learn that way. On the admin side of things, there's a lot of there's a whole sort of admin community in REDCap. So there's a forum where you can ask questions and learn some of the more complicated things and ask questions about that. But but in terms of sort of adding and removing users, that kind of admin side of things is pretty straightforward, I guess. Well, that didn't take long at all to pick up. It was quite intuitive.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Jacqui asked a question on how long REDCap has been at the Burnet, but it looks like Anna's answered it, which is 6 to 7 years. Does that sound right, Long?
Yeah, I think 5 years. I think 2016 was the first project. Probably spoke about it for 6-7 years.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Anna, about the migration of studies as well. Is that like quite an arduous process, Long? If you've got studies that already exist in like a different piece of software and then transferring them over? Because I suppose you'd also have to merge, like look at some way of combining the data as well as the survey itself.
Yeah, look, it's not too arduous and it's often beneficial. I mean, it is beneficial, which is why you'll do it. So we've had projects that were collecting data on other platforms that were just, they weren't sort of fulfilling the requirements, I guess. And so when you already have an existing project, in some ways it's easy because it's all your surveys, all your data is already designed, so you can easily implement that in REDCap. And REDCap has ways where you can sort of import if your projects come from another system like Qualtrics or something else, you can export that project straight into REDCap, or you can have it even Excel. If your data is already in Excel, you can sort of transform that in a way that you can easily import into REDCap.
Yeah.
Josh, can I just ask Long a question? I'm just thinking about the people that we have on the call here, a lot of people working for community-based organisations. And I was having this conversation just yesterday in my education role where you could use REDCap as like sending out an evaluation after an education session. And then so it would be the same survey that you would send out over time. And then that data then is all sort of collected so you could look at it together or separately?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So once you've got that project set up, it's there and available to use every year ongoing. So we've certainly got projects like that, and you might tweak it. You might add some questions every year, but you can always then go back and look at the data for multiple years and, compare changes over time. Sure.
Because I guess that's one of the things with SurveyMonkey, isn't it? That you send out the survey link and you can collate the information, but then you then have to like move it you'd have to combine that data together yourself. whereas REDCap would do that for you. Is that right?
Yeah, it would all be within the same project. Yeah.
Yeah.
Deciding that. I guess one of the big things why we moved to REDCap is we had people using so many different tools. Like people were collecting data in Microsoft Access, Excel, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms. It was just so decentralized and and hard as an institution to control privacy and that sort of thing. Or just concerns around where is all this data being stored? Are we meeting our requirements in terms of legislation? And so having everybody sort of centralize that and I guess improve the skill set as an organization as well, so that everybody can then start supporting each other. It sort of made sense to centralize the tool from multiple perspectives.
Long, I can see that Amanda's got, Amanda Cavassi from Quinn has got a question along those lines. So is there any integration into other systems? So if they're doing client surveys on an Access program, no, not on Access. So if we were doing client surveys on Access programs, can you import the info into an existing client system?
You can. So it might require, there's different ways you get data out of REDCap. You can just get it out as an Excel file. And if your other system can import an Excel file, you can do it that manual way. But it also allows API, so like a programming interface. So you could, if you had a programmer, they could pull the data programmatically straight out of REDCap and into another system that allows a program interface. So we do have projects that do that as well. Even within REDCap, we do things where we grab data straight out of REDCap, tweak it in a way to modify that data and then import it back into a separate project to that So we have one that works out when somebody needs to be followed up for an interview. That we would pull data out of an interview project and then push it into another project that sends out reminders to people to follow up. So you can start doing a lot of fancy things once you start using that programming interface.
We are getting quite a few questions, and just for the recording for people who are watching, I'll read out some of these questions. Anna is addressing them as they go, but Jacqueline's just asked if there's an online training version, or do you need to download or sign up to it to have a look at it? And Anna's just referred Jacqueline to the REDCap demo.vanderbilt.edu. Is there any comment on that? But as you just actually set these things up and just play around with them.
Yeah, that demo is actually where I did start the very first use of it. So yeah, that online demo was absolutely useful. And then once we had it installed ourselves, there was just playing around with it then. But yeah, REDCap do have their own demo.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make sure, Josh, that demo site is in the notes that we send out as well.
I'll distribute some other resources as well, like some sort of short intro videos that I think are quite helpful.
Yeah. And Megan's just asked, can REDCap be useful outside of a project setting? So, evaluating the effectiveness of existing services with long-term funding. And Anna's just responded and said, yeah, this is absolutely the way that the Burnet is tracking a lot of projects and publications. So it's not just about research or patient data.
No. I mean, we've started using Burnet just for kind of workflows as well to improve the way we do things. For example, if someone wants to put together a concept sheet for a new study they're interested in, they'll enter that to a REDCap survey, and then that triggers an email to the team that evaluates the concept sheets. They'll approve it and they'll trigger another email to somebody else. And so we're using it just for the sort of workflows as well as research and evaluation.
Yeah.
Anna, very polite.
Anna, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, Long, I was really interested in your comment to say that, we went to REDCap because there was a pressing need, and that need is obviously different for Burnet from other organizations. But I'm just wondering if you wanted to expand on that, and maybe people can reflect on what is that tipping point I know a lot of people have tools that they use currently and they work really well, and the Burnet was the same. But what do you feel like was the point that you got to that you thought this isn't working, we need something else? And, you know, other people, I guess I'm interested in your thoughts as to say, when would you get to the point where you think what we've got actually is no longer fit for purpose?
Thanks, Anna. I think it was a culmination of several different projects all hitting sort of crunch points in their projects. So ones where they were collecting data in Excel spreadsheets, and they were collecting longitudinal data from interviews with people. And the spreadsheet was just getting so out of hand. It was, so many columns and different worksheets. And I think someone at one point had a link on that Excel spreadsheet to another sheet which was stored on their local computer, so that other people couldn't then access that spreadsheet anymore. It just sort of broke. And similarly, there were ones where we were collecting data with Microsoft Access. And if anyone's, most people have been inflicted with an Access database at some point. It's usually one person who has that kind of skill set who's sitting somewhere in the corner, putting it together, wishing they didn't know how to write Microsoft Access, because it's sort of a dying skill set in a way. And so that was me basically being sort of a pinch point for different Access databases and having people wait to have their databases, upgraded, and Access as well in Excel. They're just not, they're not as accessible as something that's available online. So we wanted something that was more available anywhere. It's easier for people to collaborate with outside of the Burnet network. So that was one of those pressing issues, I guess. And the other one was having the data controlled within the Burnet. So we knew exactly where it was stored, having it on SurveyMonkey or Survey Gizmo, one of those other sort of survey tools. I don't think we weren't meeting our what we need to do in terms of privacy and control of data and knowing where it was stored. And REDCap as well has a lot of inbuilt sort of order control, so who's done what in REDCap, what changes have occurred to the data. It's really been designed with a lot of privacy and data integrity sort of is key. So those are the main triggers.
I'm just thinking in the interest of time. Jacqui, did you?
Yeah, look at me. I'm trying to be polite, Josh, putting up my hand.
Sorry.
Instead of just butting in like I normally do. Long, I'm also once again thinking about all the people here online. I'm thinking of all the different organisations that we have represented. They are not going to have a long. They're going to have that type of person that Josh knows a lot about this, but he still goes to you. So if people start using REDCap, what support is available for community orgs, for individuals?
Yeah. So there is when you do get REDCap installed, somebody will be designated as the admin. And so that admin will have access to a forum of other REDCap admins that you can always ask questions to. But for people who aren't admins who are sort of using REDCap, there are Google groups. There's an international, quite active Google group that you can join and ask questions about REDCap. There are so many resources online that other institutes and organizations have put together for how to do this in REDCap. REDCap itself has built into the training videos. So that was a bit of a starting point as well, I guess, when we first had it installed. There's, how we work at Burnet is we have a little, I guess, community of people. We use Slack as kind of a peer support kind of option. So I don't know if there's something you could start at your organization or perhaps join our one on our Slack channel. But I guess the more people you get working on it, you can then start supporting each other in a way.
And I suppose that there is the option as well of having some sort of organization that you're affiliated with and trying to have a REDCap set up on their server so that you have access to their administrator as well if you have a good relationship with another organization. Would that be a fair sort of workaround if you are in an organization which doesn't have as much capacity?
Yeah, that would be a great solution. And then you sort of take the infrastructure and sort of managing upgrades out of your hands as well. Yeah, but the system itself is easy to upgrade, sort of once a month as an admin. You know, the other good thing about REDCap is they do weekly sort of updates to the software, so to fix any security issues or add more features. There are so many features in there that still don't use that look like they could be useful. But in terms of upgrading it, is literally like you don't need any technical expertise. You can sort of hit a button, which is what we do every month, and we'll get sort of the latest version, with security patches and new features.
Thanks, Long. Josh, I know you're keen to move. They're just getting quite a few questions on the chat that I think will be really useful. So Amanda's just asked, has there been feedback from ethics approval groups use of REDCap? And Anna's just indicated that lots of ethics committees are now becoming really familiar with REDCap. Long, have you got any comments about ethics and their familiarity with REDCap?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ethics committees are very familiar with REDCap. It's so ubiquitous now and widely used in research that it's a kind of, if anything, it's preferred because it's a well sort of used and tested tool, and it complies with all those privacy sort of requirements as well around patient data. Yeah,
and Kerry's sorry.
I was going to say, we've also recently started consenting people electronically using REDCap as well, and so that's been approved by ethics committees. So we've sort of taken paper forms out of the equation. It's made things a bit simpler.
That's great. And Kerry's just asked if REDCap can be used as a contact database. That was, yes, that is definitely a way that REDCap can be used. So lots of
yeah, absolutely,
options.
So we use that a lot in REDCap, and we've used REDCap to directly send emails out to participants and send SMSs, and it can even sort of phone people up if you went that route.
With a pre-recorded message.
Wow.
Yeah, you can interface REDCap with like Twilio, sort of a telephony service, and you can survey people like digitally on the in a telephone call. Like press 1 for yes, press if you really wanted to annoy people, you could go that route.
Long, you should make like a really passive aggressive one that you set up, and then when I break something in REDCap, it can call me, and it can be like you recorded. Josh, stop doing that right now.
See, Josh, these are the keywords we don't want to hear when you break REDCap.
I don't really.
This was almost Jacqui.
I've only ever got in trouble once in 2 years. I only got in trouble once.
I do often say you can't break REDCap. Just like keep playing with it, test it out, because that's how you'll learn how to use it. Because it doesn't really break, and if it does break, because of all the sort of the access and user controls, you're only going to break your project. You're not going to break the entire system. And you can always, because it's got version control, you can always go back to a previous version that you worked on, or that kind of thing. So you can't really. I find it's really hard to break.
You're right. I was trying to make. Unless you're Josh, I have special skills. All right, I think we should move on in the interest of time. Although I feel bad because it's been such an interesting conversation. I'm sure there's lots more questions, but I just want to thank Long again. I can't see him anymore because I've got the screen share, but thank you so much, Long, for answering the questions and coming along. It's seriously so good to get your insight and hear your experiences. And if anyone's got any questions as well that they want to ask Long, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them. If you email them through to us, we can pass them on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh.
All right, so because we don't really have time to kind of go through the nitty gritty of setting up a REDCap, so I just wanted to kind of go through some of its basic. We've kind of already discussed a lot of these basic functionalities around setting up a REDCap, but some of the kind of things that it has that a lot of other tools don't have is the ability to control which questions are seen by participants when they open up a survey. So, asking men if they're pregnant. You can make sure that never happens. You can have offline data collection, which Anna mentioned before, which can be really helpful if you're going into certain settings that don't have access to internet. And you can also do the app, which you can use your mobile or an iPad on, so you don't need to bring your desktop with you around. It's quite flexible, so you can collect different types of data. It can be patient level data, and you can also do kind of the aggregate level data and overall level data as well. And then there's a whole range of advanced features, and they're in the form of what's known as external modules, which I believe are user-written packages. And they're really, really flexible, and there's hundreds of them that have lots and lots of different purposes in lots of different settings. Moving on, so I just have a screenshot here on the right-hand side of the screen, which is this is what the online designer looks like. So this is if you're opening up your REDCap and you're setting up a survey for the first time, you've got this add field option to add a variable in. There's an example of a skip logic. So this would only appear, Megan's seen this form a lot of times. This will only appear if someone indicates that they're a researcher. Oh, sorry, this isn't Megan's form. Anyway, and then there's different types of variables. So there's the top variable is a date variable. The second variable is a categorical variable. And then the third one is a free text. So there's lots of different things you can do, and there's lots of flexibility within the online designer. And setting this stuff up is really intuitive, at least at this kind of setting up a simple survey that looks good is really quite simple to do. So this is an example of what the survey might look like once you've distributed it. So this is from the user's perspective, the participant's perspective. So we've got, in this case, we've got a Burnet logo, which you've added at the top. You can put in some sort of guidance for participants on how they can complete the survey. So you might want to include your inclusion and exclusion criteria, or maybe if you've got matrix questions, more complex types of questions, you can provide some guidance to people on how they can answer them. And then you can also, there's also an example here of a field that's required. So it might be that if someone is too young or too old for your study, then they actually can't progress further. And you might want to put that on and make this kind of field required. The last screenshot I wanted to share was the REDCap mobile app so this is what it looks like when you open it up in your iPad or mobile, and you can do this, you can enter this data offline, and then later you can send it to the REDCap server, or you can do it live. So it's got a lot of functionalities and a lot of useful purposes. And then this here is what's called the record status dashboard. So this is for if you're managing a project where you have a number of participants and you want to track them over time, and you want to be able to go in and potentially edit some of their records and do this kind of data entry through the REDCap itself. So this is an example of a study that had 4 different time points, and within each time point it had different tools, and the participants were able to be tracked and recorded over time for the whole 12 months of the study. So you can then link these record IDs, you can link these tools by the record ID once you extract the data. So this is an example of maybe a slightly more complicated REDCap study, but also shows just kind of the degree to which the REDCap can be used for different study designs and for different things. So you can go all the way from a simple survey, just consenting someone, to something like this, which has got the longitudinal follow-up. So hopefully that kind of rushed through it there, which I'm aware of, but just in the interest of time, I wasn't able to kind of go through the nitty-gritty of how to set these things up. But there are a lot of resources, as Long was saying. You can do the kind of test version of REDCap, and then there's also a number of YouTube videos around, and there's us as well if you want some help. So there's lots of resources out there to kind of get yourself set up and comfortable using REDCap. So next, I think Jacqui's going to kind of take this session over, but Megan Hughes, I'm going to let Jacqui take it away, actually.
Thank you, Josh. Can you stop sharing your screen just so we can
of
see
course.
everybody again? Are there any questions for Josh on the setting it up? Amanda's exhaling. I can see you. You're like, oh my gosh, this is a big job. Do I do it? Yes, I can read your mind. Yes. Look, the purpose of the next session is to talk to somebody who's using it. So I was thinking when we were writing some questions for Megan, I thought, well, we could ask Megan, why did you choose to use REDCap? Well, Megan never chose to use REDCap. Megan was very clearly inducted into the program and told, you're using REDCap. So lucky Megan. Megan, do you want to come off mute? So Megan is the clinical nurse consultant in the Tasmanian hepatitis. Oh my gosh, what is that acronym, Megan?
Tasmanian Eliminate Hepatitis C Australian Outreach Project. I also didn't name the project. I'll say I got given that too.
You got given this very long acronym and REDCap.
I think there's an A in it, Anna.
There is. That's the Australia.
It's in Australia because it's Tasmania, and Tasmania
after the C.
Plus Anna. So we thought that one of the biggest barriers to to overcoming barriers is to actually hear from people who are using it. So Megan, we've been working closely with Megan for the last, I can't believe it's really only 12 months, but it is only 12 months. So Megan, can you just give us an overview of how you've used REDCap in that Tasmanian outreach project?
Sure. So I will say that I probably use REDCap every single day that I work. So it's a pretty big part of our project, but it's really not that time consuming at all for people who are considering it. So each day I collect data on, so Josh has set up a REDCap that kind of captures each nurse-led activity that we offer services. So that's venipuncture, education, staff education, client engagement, client phone calls. So the whole suite of things that we do in our project. So then at the end of the day, when I kind of keep a tally of what I've done for the day, I just quickly submit all the data. So that's how we use it. It's extremely handy in terms of evaluation of what's working and what's not working, because we can really quickly get numbers of where we're seeing people and what services we're providing education to.
So you've answered about 3 questions there in one, so well done to you.
Oh, sorry.
So in terms of all the different data fields that you're collecting, so you don't actually collect patient information here. And Josh, do you have a comment about collecting patient data in REDCap, as in identifiable?
Well, in terms of the actual collection of data, so depending on the project you're working on, so with Megan's, it doesn't really require each patient to be recorded individually as a row of data, which is why what we have with Megan is that each time she has a kind of visit to a clinic or a site, she just enters total number of people that she had interacted with in a day as part of her job. Whereas there's obviously certain projects where every single time you have any kind of interaction with a patient, that needs to be entered. And both of those things are, because REDCap's so flexible, both of those things are very possible to do. It's just in terms of the actual implementation of the project, it kind of changes a little bit in terms of, you might, if you have to record information every time that you interact with a patient, then you might want to look at having an iPad available just to kind of make that a bit more of an easy process. Or just thinking about it, not so much from the REDCap side, but more from the kind of practical implementation side of running a project. So yeah, which is a big reason why with Megan, we looked at doing this one row of data per day or per visit rather than one row per person, because Megan is just one person and she's doing so many things in a day. We wanted to give her a kind of more straightforward, simplified process for collecting data rather than a really kind of arduous one for her. So that would be my comment.
Thanks, Josh. And Megan, so you enter the data at the end of every day?
Well, it depends on what I'm doing, I guess. So phone calls, I try to enter the data as soon as I've off the phone to that client. So because we're looking at length of phone call too. So, if you asked me 3 days ago, how long did you talk to this patient for? I wouldn't remember. So the other thing is, if in your day you've kind of blocked out your morning for phone contact with clients, I actually just keep a list of how many phone calls I've made and what was the call duration. And then at the end of that session, I might log all those phone calls. So that's for phone calls. For outreach days, I just keep numbers throughout the day of the patients I'm seeing. And then, yeah, at the end of the day, I tally it all up and enter that. Education sessions, it's really quite simple. I count how many people are in the room, and when I get back, into that data for that session.
Yep. And so what do you feel like you get out of REDCap? I mean, I know we've just sent you some data just this week, I think. So what do you get out of it?
I think it's, in terms of our project, you know, we're trying to prove that community-based intervention for hepatitis C is really effective and will, you know, ultimately help achieve elimination in Tasmania. So in terms of that message, we do need numbers about where we see people, how many people we see, and how many people we engage in what way. So in that way, it's truly helpful, because otherwise you can't evaluate or reflect on your project at all, I don't think, without those numbers. I also have treatment data about where those patients have come from as well. So you can, you know, you need to, for something to be seen as effective, you have to say why. We can't just say, oh, I think it's going really well. We can say, well, this is how many numbers we've seen here. This is how many we've seen here. And for a 2-year project, when you're forward planning, if you look at areas where you've got heaps of numbers, I won't remember how many people I saw somewhere 6 months ago, but I can say, hey, Josh, can you get up all my sessions at Clarence? And we can have a look at those numbers. Oh, okay, it wasn't that great. Maybe we don't go back there. So in that way, in terms of planning, it's very helpful too.
So yeah, it's that real-time data being fed back into project implementation that's really important. So this is quite a unique situation. I think to point out here that we host, so Burnet hosts the Tasmanian REDCap on our server, and that's not a usual situation, but it's just the way we decided to set this up. Moving forward, we would hope that it's almost like Megan's doing an internship with Josh on REDCap. So, you know, in time, when we use all this data that we've collected, and they get funding and it keeps going, the idea is hopefully then that, you know, the REDCap will be able to be transferred to Tassie, and that will be managed. So Amanda's got a really good question here about what does the data actually look like when it comes back to you? So Megan, I'm interested in what it looks like for you. And then Josh, the second part of that question for you is how much work is it to set up that reporting function? So
I don't know if I want to know the answer to that second.
I can probably answer both sides.
Yeah, you go, Josh. Yep.
So the way that the data is set up is that if you think about it in terms of like kind of 2x2 kind of situation, each row of data is like a site visit. So, and then each column is like, we have a column for a number of people who received hepatitis C education, number of people who received venipuncture, number of people who were positive. And so it's kind of that kind of aggregate level data. And then each row is kind of a date of a clinic visit. So in that case, we can't do stuff like care cascades and like look at the kind of follow individual patients over time because of the nature of the data. But what we can do is look at how many people had been tested and treated overall and look at that as a kind of figure over time. So there's still a lot of things we can look at, but if you are looking to do kind of the more complex individual level analyses, then you will need to have one row of data per individual. So for our purposes, it wasn't really necessary. And so we tried to be realistic about what we could achieve with the data collection and with Megan's time. The second half of it on reporting. So the way that I've set this up with Megan is we've used the API functionality that Long was talking about earlier, which is effectively a way of interacting with the REDCap server to pull data out. And then I've written a piece of code that actually produces a report from that data. So it's got
this is Josh, you're losing me. You're writing code.
Yeah. So I'm acknowledging that the code that I wrote is sort of a specialized skill set I've developed to to do regular reporting. For me, it takes probably, for this project, I would say overall took me 6 to 10 hours to get the code written. And then since then, we've produced about like probably over 15 reports. So it's been, in terms of like time investment, I think like good time investment, but then there's obviously that kind of specialized skill set of being able to set up API extracts and write that reporting code. But there is, which I'm sure some of you know, but not everyone will, there is a reporting function within REDCap itself, which I'm wondering, I know Long's already done his Q&A, but I'm wondering, Long, do you know anything, have you got much sort of familiarity with that reporting process within REDCap itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a reporting function where you don't have to write code, and you can report on the data live as it comes in. You can design your reports to look for certain categories of data or filter for certain categories. And there's a new feature in the latest version of REDCap, which we're just looking at now. You can create sort of project dashboards. So this is again without programming, but you sort of set it up. And so you can have a quick snapshot that aggregates your data. You can, have bar charts and pie charts, even though no one really likes them, and summary sort of tables that sort of just update live as the data comes in, and it can be only accessible to you within your project, or you can also make it accessible to the whole world as a public URL. So if you had to report to somebody else outside your organization, you can just say, look, click on this link. This is a summary of how our project's going, and this is the work that we're doing. Yeah, so that's without the programming. You just have to learn a little bit of sort of REDCap syntax, I guess, a bit like branching logic. But once you've got that, you can start creating sort of reports out of REDCap.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of an investment. It's a little bit of a commitment. But once you make that commitment, everything's pretty automated.
Absolutely, yeah. With reports and those dashboards, once you sort of set them up, design them, and then they're just there ready to be run, or they're always available, basically. Yeah, and that obviously that will save you time in the long run, having to prepare a report every month or that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Morris has asked a really good question in the chat, which I know Anna has responded to, but I just wanted to, because I think it's a really good question. So if an external organisation is evaluating your project, do they also have to have access to your REDCap, or is it easy to extract a summary of the data and from processes and outcomes as you would in other things like Excel? Josh, do you have anything to say on that? We can read out Anna's response. It's really comprehensive, but did you want to address any of that?
I just need to have a quick reread of the question, sorry. Is it the
no, that's right.
one?
That's okay, I can comment if you want.
Yeah,
well,
thanks, Anna.
Kind of catches up.
Yep.
So you can give access to your REDCap to different people, and we have done that at the Burnet. So you don't necessarily have to be a Burnet person. On some of our projects, we've collaborated with other people, and we go through Long to say this is, and we go through our IT department, because everything we do is regulated, to say this person is approved. So they've got ethics approval, they might get an honorary staff position, or they might, we've ticked all the boxes to say they can have REDCap access. We set them up with an email, with a Burnet email, and say they can access the project. That means they can see all the data. That gives them the same level of ability to use REDCap, though, as a normal user. And that might not be what you actually need. You might actually just want the data. And so you don't need access to REDCap to get the data. So the organization could actually extract the data for you, create you a file, transfer that file. Either way, it's the same kind of hoops you need to jump through, because that person's ability to access data is regulated by whatever is controlling. So that will be at a fundamental level. We're all regulated by privacy legislation. So everybody here, maybe we could do that, but that would be a very poorly attended seminar on the privacy laws. But you should have a little brush up on the privacy legislation, because that actually affects all of us, because that's about how we collect and use every single piece of information. So fundamentally, privacy laws, Above that is your internal kind of governance of your data and the information you collect. And above that, you might actually have ethics that says a person can have this kind of access. Once you're aware of those frameworks, you then set up your tools and your data transfer within those frameworks.
Mm-hmm. So the actual process of setting someone up with a REDCap account is quite straightforward, and then
that's the easy part.
Yeah, once you set up an account, you can also customize their profile as well, their account, so you can give them different access permissions and allow them to do different things. Like you can allow them to extract data but not edit any tools.
So that's the easy part. The hard part is you have to have a conversation with someone like me who does not see grey and only sees the rules, and you have to do the rules first. Or you can go to Long, who's a bit more like, yeah, we can probably sort that out for you.
If you're giving somebody access, is it either full access or no access? You couldn't, for example, give somebody access to just see, all of the data without any identifying information like patient names or participant names or something like that.
So your data, you should set up your REDCap that way anyway. So you shouldn't have identifiable data that sits next to survey data. So yeah, you're exactly right. You could set it up so they, for example, could just view the survey results and they couldn't see the name. That should be set up anyway, because there should be people within your project. Sorry, I know I use the word should a lot. Ideally, within your REDCap project, you would have an area for the names and an area for the survey data anyway. So yeah, you're right, Morris. You could just give them access. That's what Josh is just explaining. You could give them access to the area of just the survey data.
Having said that as well, REDCap does allow you, if you are collecting identifiable data, to flag variables as identifiable, and then you can prevent this particular people from accessing or viewing that data. It can do things like time shifting as well. So if you can identify somebody by times of consultations or something like that, or a pattern of times, it can sort of shift the data when you export it. So the time intervals are the same, but the specific time sort of hidden, I guess. So it's got sort of built-in sort of identification protections.
Yeah, when you're creating a tool in REDCap or a survey, you can actually flag some variables that you create as potentially identifiable of people. And then when you give people user permissions, you could say, for this user, when I'm giving Morris permission, I don't want him to be able to access those identifiable variables, so that they would be hidden from you. So yeah, you can really highly customize each individual account within REDCap, because you'll be the owner of your own project. When you add other people to the project who have accounts, you can add them with kind of, set permissions within the REDCap itself. But like Anna says, you're still bound by the rules.
And we want to avoid data accidents. Data accidents do not sound like fun. Megan, thank you for sharing. Does anyone have any, really implementation questions for Megan around her experience of? It's been a steep learning curve, Megan, over the last 12 months.
In a lot of elements of my work, yes. But I just wanted to say one more comment, and I know we're running out of time, but the one great thing is also we've had really nice moments in our project that we can look back and see what data is not being collected and that needs to be. So we've altered this REDCap a lot of times, sorry, Josh, when, you're running a clinic and I think, hang on, this isn't quite getting captured, or that's not quite getting captured. So maybe we need to change the way. So in terms of those branching questions, under Venipuncher now, I think I've loaded up about 4 branching questions to find out a little more about these people that we're taking the blood off. So yeah, it's not concrete, which I really like about it too.
It's a very, very good point, because as you get into implementation, things pop up and questions are raised. So thank you, Megan. Really appreciate it. Megan's dialing in on a day off. So really appreciate that.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks for your help.
Any other questions on REDCap? Oh, Amanda. Amanda's going. You go for it, Amanda. Where are you?
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
Hi. I just missed the very first slide at the start of the presentation, so I apologise. I think this is what my question refers to. So in our situation, we have an external company that provides our IT support. So we contract externally. So is that a barrier to implementation or us using REDCap, or does it need to be an internal IT?
It needs to be internal, unfortunately.
Should ask it at the start.
It's contractually, unfortunately, the way that the contract is set up, you can't have any third-party IT people.
All right. So the only way we could use it would be with a partner organization that hosts it on their server and shares permission with us to.
Well, you could host it yourself. You could use it yourself, but you would need to have an administrator employed by Quinn who actually manages the REDCap. But there could be a Quinn REDCap set up, and that would be free to set up. But you wouldn't be able to get a third-party IT person to manage it for you.
That is.
Let's have another job.
By the way, Anna Rules Wilkinson. That is not my nickname. Definitely. Skip that one.
Long, do you have something you wanted to add to that?
I was going to say I know of organisations who do use third-party IT, and have sort of, as long as they've committed to having somebody in-house to kind of take ownership of that process, you can still have third-party IT. I don't know. It gets a little grey, I guess.
You got Anna Rules Wilkinson in the chat, so I don't know if you want to.
It's a ravel. We're losing control.
Have a read of the licensing agreement and see if you can, if your organisation's happy with it, I guess, is what I'd say.
So you could always there are many ways to skin a cat here, and there is some potentially room to move, particularly if you could make the argument to your organisation that it could be a time saver, and really help consolidate and actually strengthen your data safety. So, Josh, did you have other slides?
No, that was it.
I'm going to quickly launch a poll because, we're evaluators, so we love to evaluate ourselves. So be most grateful if you could just provide us with some feedback. I wanted to thank Josh very much. When we sat down and thought about this at the end of last year, beginning of this year, it was like, yeah, what a great idea. And then it turns out it's actually quite a lot of work. So Josh, thank you very much. You've invested a lot of time and thought into this. I do believe we're going for round 3, but I think it's in 5 minutes time. So that will be.
I do have a slide actually for
that.
Next dates. Is that on the right one? Can everyone see?
Next one, I think. So that visual representation.
Okay.
Visual representation of data. So once you've got your REDCap, and how is the best way to actually present all that data, and then we'll have a bit of a break for another month, and then come back with a bit of Hep C surveillance 101, which I think we might be getting a guest appearance from Rules Wilkinson on that one. So really grateful to Long, and also really grateful to Megan for sharing your experiences. Change is difficult, and sometimes you sometimes get backed into a wall where all of a sudden Excel's not doing what you need it to do, or SurveyMonkey starts costing you a lot of money per month, which is my situation. So it's really great to just have the opportunity to hear from experts and hear from people who do this all the time, who aren't scared of it. So thank you all very much for your time, and we hope to see you at the next one, or we'll talk to you, no doubt. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.